Let's talk about Dave Matthews Band. Let's talk about racism and charity. On CBS This Morning, there was a great piece on the band and their new record and some of the initiatives and things that they took on over the last year. And I'm going to share with you some of the things that you saw on CBS This Morning and a couple of things that you didn't see on the television feature. So even if you saw it, you're going to pick up a couple of new things here. They sat down and they were talking about Charlottesville in particular, and some of this centers around the tragedy that happened in Charlottesville last year and what the band came together to do after that. Let's pick it up with Dave being asked what it's like to come home and play a show in Charlottesville where the band formed.
Play here.
It's always harder to play at home. It's a weird thing. It's always a homecoming. It's always joyful, but you always want to do better. I wrote a lot of my songs in that pink warehouse. Is it pink? What color is that? Is it peach?
It's pink. Though Matthews now lives
so they walked around Charlotte as well, and as you'll see in the TV piece, I got to see the Warehouse, which is a big song of the Dave Matthews Band. In fact, that's what their fan club is called, right? The Warehouse. Pretty significant, pretty cool to see that historical plot of land, at least in the context of the band itself. I'm going to let this next part speak for itself. We pick it up again. This is from Dave's appearance on CBS This Morning.
You've given away like more than $40 million. Like this is something.
What? What? I'm going to put an end to that immediately. Here is Crescent Halls.
The band.
Can you imagine that, though? I mean, I know bands have given away a lot over the course of their time, but again, this is a band that is 20, are they even 30 years old? No, not even 30 years old, and they've given away $40 million, including $5 most recently for a housing project in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Recently committed $5 million to reimagine public housing in Charlottesville, beginning with a complete renovation of this residential apartment building downtown.
Things are falling apart, elevators don't work, and it's amazing that you can be in the middle of everything and still be this neglected.
You talked about feeling roots in Charlottesville. You bounced around a lot before that.
My father and mother are South African. My dad was a physicist and he did research at UVA. He passed away when I was a kid, and then we went back to South Africa for the supportive family that was there.
Matthews went to high school there while the segregationist apartheid was still in place.
And then when I finished high school, I got my call-up papers to join the military there, and I thought, that's not something I'm desperate to do. And so I moved back to the States. But when I came back to America, I suddenly everywhere I looked, there was racism. And it was sort of amazing, but it hit me in the face all the time.
In the name of the Commonwealth, you are commanded to immediately disperse.
Charlottesville itself was hit in the face in August of 2017 with the white supremacists. How did that make you feel as somebody who put down roots in Charlottesville?
I don't know if it's an irony, but I was in South Africa, and I was with family there, and, excuse me. And my friend Brian phoned me and said, I think I've just witnessed a murder. I think I've just witnessed a hate crime. It's very hard when you look at what happened in this town, the destruction of a beautiful possibility. And it broke my heart to see it happen. But I do think that maybe we can make some beautiful progress out of that. Thank you very much.
That progress for Matthews started with a concert for Charlottesville in 2017.
Charlottesville is a place full of hope,
which featured performances from Justin Timberlake, Pharrell, and Ariana Grande.
So he's talking about the concert, and then here is a piece of the interview that did not air on CBS This Morning, although they did make master tapes of the interview available to the public if you know where to go to find it. And so here's Dave continuing to talk about this on an issue that I always like to bring up and have for quite some time, especially for my friends who love taking in news and cable news quite often. This is Dave, again, not part of the main feature of his appearance on CBS This Morning, discussing that epic concert that was done down in Charlottesville, Virginia.
3.5 weeks later, a month later, we had a concert in Charlottesville with, I mean, it was the lineup was, I never thought that I'd be on stage with all, it was all the superstars. Justin Timberlake, Pharrell. I mean, it was unbelievable. Ariana Grande, is unbelievable. And then the cherry on top of all cherries, Stevie Wonder showed up. I mean, it was the most amazing concert. Didn't make as much news as 2,000 Nazis, but we don't have the same chic as 2,000 Nazis. But we're the majority, and that's the point.
So there you go. There's the Dave, literally, and amazing how that got cut out of the news story. Dave pointing out media bias, because again, I'm not talking about media bias in the form of left-leaning or right-leaning. I'm talking about negative sells in the media, positive doesn't. The tragedy, the 2,000 Nazis, as he so wonderfully says, that's the sexy part for the media. That gets all the coverage, not the fact that all these artists came together. That got coverage. People heard about it, but not as much as the negative part about it. And the piece continues to discuss what it's like for the public housing situation in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Housing unit in the city of Charlottesville, all 376 of them.
And how the Dave Matthews Band is going to be replacing all of the public housing structures and making them habitable once again, because they've all pretty much fallen into disrepair.
I don't know. I have no idea. I dream about going and living in a hut in Kenya and growing my facial hair. But I'm very grateful for being able to make a noise with people that want to make a noise.
That's Dave talking about, will he continue to go on and tour? The other piece, and again, as I was watching this, I was watching this as a fan of the band going, it's nice to talk about this and not have to talk about Boyd. And then when I listened to the excerpts of the interview, the stuff that didn't make the main feature, I got literally 85% through. And again, sort of had this feeling of, well, isn't this a nice thing to talk about and not have to talk about the fact that, Boyd left and the sexual allegations and all that stuff. And then there, of course, was this piece. And I thought, nah, that's not that big of a deal. And then I started feeling guilty about kind of rushing over it. So I throw it out either way. Again, this is not part of the feature that aired on CBS. But they were talking about the early days of the band and Dave sharing the stage with people and how fortunate he was. And, if he had a goal, if this was the goal, again, $40 million given over the course of their time. I mean, that's lovely and wonderful. Was this the goal? Was this the overall vision to get this big, to get this huge, to be in this position where you could give back? And Dave's answer was pretty interesting to me.
Served people, I met people, and I had a lovely time, and I met all these great musicians, and I'd stay up past closing time and drink numerous bottles of bourbon with John Dirth and I got to know all these people. I got to play music with John Dirth. John was one of my greatest teachers, but I don't know if I ever thought that it was like the band. When I got with the band, when I got with Carter and Leroy, and then Stefan, and the band that grew after that, it was like almost, when I look back at it, almost feels like I fell into a river that was moving, like I was here and then suddenly moved.
So that was the part that I was like, he is very careful to choose his words in naming 4 out of the 5 founding members, but then being aware enough to not completely ignore Boyd by saying, and then the band that grew from there. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. And, when you watch Dave and you hear Dave, he's very slow and deliberate. He thinks about what he says. He says a lot. In fact, as I listened to this piece, he said I blab a couple times. But I found this part to be interesting where I guess he didn't want to say his name by name, but also didn't want to not acknowledge that there was more than just those four that started the band. And you maybe think that's not that big of a deal. And it's not. But I just thought it was interesting that, again, he chose not to say his name, but also had that feeling of like, the band, grew from there. I mean, he also didn't mention, Peter or any of the other sort of members that were, well, I mean, it really was just Peter, I guess, who wrote a lot of songs with them early on. But yeah, still this sort of thing is there. And I found it interesting because I thought, like, we're almost a year removed from the announcement that Boyd was going to take some time from the band, and you kind of think, well, I wonder if after time and whatever else, if those two entities, Dave Matthews Band and Boyd, will ever sort of find their way on stage again, and maybe they will and maybe they won't, but I think the point right now is it not anytime soon. And that statement right there sells that fact to me, is that absolutely not anytime soon. If you can't say the guy's name, that's pretty telling. And I love this next part that he talks about, being in the band and joining this wave. I think punk fans will appreciate this next part too.
When we were just in a van, I know if I went back and I told myself I wouldn't be like it, but I think of my life, suddenly it had this crazy focus of like, and so, record companies would say that you'll never do anything. And we'd send tapes to South by Southwest, and they're like, whatever, your music won't do anything. But we'd play for people and people would go crazy. Like, we'd play for people that never heard us and they would go bananas. And we're like, well, something's happening. And so every time we'd hear from people, well, that kind of music isn't happening, we'd be like, whoa, what's wrong with you?
Well, what's wrong with you? Wasn't that the same story of punk and any other big thing that happened? Like, it happens on the streets first. It happens in the clubs. It happens in the bars and the labels and pop culture and everything else. Oh, the last people to find out about it, And that was always sort of the interesting thing about this band in particular for me, was that they were having this visceral reaction with people, and the labels were really some of the last people to find out about it, and the masses were really, really the last people to find out about it. But that just goes to show you that whatever it is you're doing in your life, wherever you are right now, if you're getting a great reaction out of people and not out of others, like, keep it going, because everybody from the Dave Matthews Band to the Ramones to, anybody else you can sit here and cite, a lot of the people in positions of power are going to be the naysayers. A lot of the times they're the ones that are farthest away from the reality of what's taking place. You know what I mean? So believe in yourself. Again, if you're getting great reactions from people that aren't obligated to give you good reactions, that just goes to show you got something cooking, and you can go back and name probably any one of your favorite bands, whoever you are. Not just the Ramones or Dave Matthews Band, but a lot of bands sort of have this story. They get it going in this club, they get it going in that club. Next thing you know, there's lines around the block. Bruce Springsteen, right? The bitter end, the lines around the block. They're staging these things, and that's sort of how all these things grow. That's sort of how all these things grow. So I know we got a lot of musicians that listen to EHM. I always like to throw a little positivity out their way. All right, let's leave it there. Nice little update from the Dave Matthews Band, little touch on the Boyd thing, but overall a positive message, which is, $5 more million that this band was able to raise and give away, $40 million over the course of their career. I think they have everything to be proud of, and that's a nice little positive story for you.